wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it is completed. Do you think that I have come to bring peace to the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, 5 in one household will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided. Father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. He also said to the crowds, when you see a cloud rising in the west, you immediately say, it is going to rain, and so it happens. And when you see the south wind blowing, you say, there will be scorching heat, and it happens. You hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of earth and sky, but why do you not know how to interpret the present time? The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
When I first got involved in church again as an adult, it was in an urban context that was exceedingly diverse. Unlike both my small-town childhood experience and my north suburban lifestyle as a parent and a working professional. The congregation I belonged to was suburban too, but our wider denominational body extended throughout the city and past its borders to both the south and the north, encompassing the African American, Asian, Hispanic populations, as well as those of us who were primarily white. The first meetings of this association that I attended sent me home with a stomachache because there was so much conflict, so much division. I had never in my sheltered life encountered the passion, the righteous anger, the urgency in the varied voices as we debated issues of justice, where our resources, our energy, and our funds should be spent, what our priorities should be, and yes, who should lead us. There was no polite sweeping of differences under the rug. No, why can't we just get along? Nope, this was fire and swords among people of faith, Christians who needed to listen and to hear one another, to be willing to be changed in order to move this world of ours toward one where all people could live in dignity and peace. Politeness was never going to make that happen. When we approach a text like the one this morning, we may be startled. Has Jesus done a pivot? Where is the loving, healing shepherd and savior in this harsh reading? I do not come in peace, but I bring division. Just prior to these verses are those we read last week, that it's God's pleasure to give us the kingdom. But perhaps we quit listening when Jesus told us that it would not be handed to us in pretty ribbon-tied packages. No, it would be costly. It would require much of us. This Jesus who brings fire and division shouldn't be a surprise to us. We see glimpses all along throughout Luke's gospel, even before Jesus' birth. This past week, the feast day of Mary, mother of Jesus, was observed in the church calendar and included the reading of the Magnificat, or Mary's song. That song is hardly a tender lullaby. It talks about scattering the proud, casting down the powerful from their thrones. It's a song of justice and promise. Then when Jesus is presented as an infant in the temple, the aged Simeon declares his purpose and the sword that will pierce Mary's heart. At age 12, of course, Jesus perplexes his parents by taking his place in his father's temple. And then there's that famous passage where Jesus tells his concerned mother and siblings that his family consists of those who follow God. As he moves into public ministry, the glimpses continue. His first sermon angers the people of his hometown as he quotes Isaiah about releasing the captives and freeing the oppressed, and that it is he who is anointed to bring good news to the poor. Jesus calls people to follow him and does not allow them to return home first to take care of their affairs or to bury their dead. They must follow him immediately. He tells them that those who follow will suffer, will be reviled, and maybe persecuted. So this Jesus we meet this morning should not be a surprise, nor is the idea of division. I do not think this is inconsistent with the shepherd, the healer, the friend. It is not an either-or. We do tend, though, to focus more or even entirely on those softer, gentler images. That Jesus is more comfortable than the one we see today. Remember that all through these weeks of Luke's gospel, we've been reading about the time in which Jesus turned his face to Jerusalem, his last long journey that will end with the crucifixion. There is a keen sense of urgency as his time for teaching and readying the disciples grows shorter and shorter. Is it possible to see Jesus' fire and sword as his passion for his mission to bring God's kingdom into being? Is it possible to see him as frustrated and disappointed, stressed out, at the chasm between his vision and the reality all around him, at the slowness of his disciples to get with the program? Goodness, division was right there around Jesus. It was present in Luke's community decades later. It is certainly here now and has been part of human life since the very beginning. The text almost poses division and peace as opposites. But I wonder, what is peace anyway? Is it the absence of conflict and disagreement? Or can there be peace within challenge, struggle, and difference? Is division always bad? Or can it be its challenge to move us all to a better place? When I was younger, during the years of suburban motherhood, trying to balance the needs of family with the demands of work that involved frequent business travel and long hours, I imagined peace in terms of a quiet island where I could go off all by myself or with a very few quiet friends, read and write and gaze out at the still water. There would be nothing to disturb or ruffle this gentle solitude. Evening would consist of a simple meal, a glass of wine, quiet conversation around a campfire with compatible friends who shared my thoughts and ideas. It would be heaven. It was in the church, those association meetings that I described earlier, and their spill-off into our congregations, where that simple view of peace began to change. Those of us who were delegates to the wider church function would return fired up, challenged out of our comfort zones, often shaken to the bone, as we had seen with new eyes how very far we were from the kingdom. I think we were learning to interpret the present time. Oh, there were no illusions about the difficulty of the road ahead, for back home, we faced complacency, contentment with the way things were, competing priorities for our attention and local resources. But somehow, a strong enough foundation as a faith community to bridge the differences, to continue to love one another. Oh, it was far from perfect, still far from the kingdom. But there was a glimmer of a different kind of peace that came from walking that path with all of its turns and its rocks, its stumbles and bruised knees. So my peaceful island image changed a bit. Oh, there's still water, but I see beauty and power in the waves when the wind is fierce. There's still the group of friends, the simple meal, the glass of wine. But the conversations have shifted along with the times to stretch us and remind us that we need not smooth things over or avoid certain topics, because what we are about is bigger than our differences. And we hope that our lives will make a difference and will bring God's kingdom just a step or two closer. The takeaways for me from pondering this text that I would have preferred to avoid are these. Jesus could not have avoided the sword and the division. His entire purpose of inaugurating God's kingdom was in direct opposition to the culture and the government of his time. His love for humanity had to go beyond healing and teaching and into the realm of transformation. Our world has the same problems, and we are called to love as Jesus loved. Sadly, our churches tend to default to the comfortable side, being nice, sweeping disagreements and differences of opinion under the rug, or not creating a fuss. And the last thing, ultimately, God's kingdom of love will prevail. Like the cloud of witnesses in the letter to the Hebrews, all did not receive, at least